How's it going out there? It's Mr. Rayna for the Bible Translator. It's nighttime. I just got off of work, but I got the second chapter done. For those of you who are just tuning in, basically I've been working on translating the book of Matthew. So what I'm about to read is the second chapter of Matthew. I've already read the first one. This is the second chapter of Matthew. The Gospel of Jesus Christ. You might know it according to Matthew. It's also called that. I'm a little tired. Just got off of work, but I want to read this at least. So let's see here. Again, this is an original translation, my personal one that I've been working on for 7 years. Well, let me better phrase that. I've worked on a technique for 7 years, and that technique, according to me, is it produces the most accurate translation into English. Okay. So without any further ado, here we go. The second chapter of Matthew. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judæa, in the days of King Herod the Great, behold, wizards from the Orient arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the King of the Jews who has been born? For we observed his star in the east, and are come to kneel down before him." And in hearing these things, Herod the king was shocked, and the whole of Jerusalem with him. And congregating all archpriests and scribes of the public, he demanded from them where Christ should be born. And so they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judæa, for thus it is written in the prophecy, Even thou, O Bethlehem, in the kingdom of Judah, art in no wise the weakest amongst the clans of Judah. For out of thee shall come forth the monarch, who shall govern Israel my people. Then Herod had the wizards summoned in secrecy, and he ascertained from them the date of the star's phenomenon. And sending them into Bethlehem, he said, Go thither, and investigate the exact whereabouts of the infant. And when ye have found him, send me an errand, so that I may come and pay homage to him as well. And so, having listened to the king, they journeyed onwards. And lo, the star, which they had seen in the east, it was moving in front of them, so that it approached, and stood above the dwelling where the infant was. And after observing the star, they cheered merrily, very loud. And when they were entered into the adobe, they beheld the infant with Mary, his mother. And bowing down low, they adored him. And uncovering their hidden treasures, they bestowed unto him gifts, pure gold, bitterest myrrh, and white incense. And whilst sleeping, the wizards received a dream, warning them that they should not reply to Herod. So they left, returning to their homeland along a different route. And after their departure, behold, an angel of our Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Awakening, take the infant and his mother, and run away into Egypt, and live there until I bring thee word. For the future holds that Herod will seek the infant to assassinate him. Then, rising up in the night, he took the infant and his mother, and fled for Egypt. And they remained there unto the time of Herod's death. This event fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet from the Lord, saying, I have called my son out of Egypt. Then Herod, perceiving that the wizards had misled him, went manically irate, and he commanded to have every infant boy living in Bethlehem and in all the neighboring settlements massacred, from 2 years of age and under, according to the date which he had foresought from the wizards. These things fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah, saying, In the highlands a voice is heard, crying out lamentations and great mourning. Rachel bewails her sons, and is unwilling to be soothed, for they are not. Nevertheless, as Herod died, behold, an angel of our Lord appeareth in Egypt to Joseph, whiles he dreamt, saying, Waking up, take the boy and his mother, and travel into the country of Israel. Indeed, death has come to those who warranted the child's life. So when Joseph awoke, he brought the boy and his mother and entered into the region of Israel. However, after hearing that Archelaus ruled as Duke of Judea, succeeding Herod his father, he feared to go further. Notwithstanding, being admonished in a dream, he turned aside into the estates of Galilee. So having arrived, he settled in a village named Nazareth, in fulfillment of what was said by the prophets, that he shall be dubbed of Nazareth. All right, like I said, that's 100% original for me. Obviously guided by the Holy Ghost. Took me 7 years to come up with the technique. I'm not gonna go too much into the weird words right now because I just got off of work. I'm tired. I just wanted to. This channel is more of a vlog. I wish I could have, more information, graphics, and all this stuff, but I just can't. Don't have the time. But basically, what time is it right now? It's 3:30 in the morning almost. So I work in the medical field, just getting off late, like I do every night, or almost every night. But yeah, that's it. This is what I do on my side time. I've been translating for the past 7 years. And I just develop a technique. That's the best way I can describe it. It's not so much like, I'm just reading the Greek or reading the Aramaic, or reading Latin, and I figure out new words. It's more of a technique that uses a lot of technology, what we would call technology, and just indexing information more efficiently and more quicker and more accurately than I think people have done before. If you look how translations have been done since the beginning, you got some guy who really understands the language a lot, and he's sitting down, he has a bunch of, he's got his key books, and he's got a base text, and and then he he's writing it from scratch completely. But so far, since the last 500 years, there's always been a base text in English to kind of go off upon. So if you noticed, my base text is the King James Bible. And the reason I use that one versus other ones is just because it's the most stable one. Versus, if I went like off the Geneva or off the Douay Rheims, those ones, they change a lot, for better or for worse. And if I use a modern one, it's probably copyrighted. So I just figured, all right, what's the most stable one? Hasn't been tinkered with too much. That's the King James. But like I said, same time, if you compare my translation to King James, you're going to see that it sounds nothing like it. But you still need the base text. You still need something to kind of go off of, and even if you're going to change it all the way around, it doesn't matter. You're still going to benefit from using a good base text. And like I said, that's one of those techniques that I developed over the years. I've had many different base texts. I tried writing one just straight up from scratch. It's not going to work out for you. Not going to work out for anybody. So basically, yeah, I'll make another video when I have time. And I'm going to highlight some of the weird words. I call them weird words that you probably you're not used to listening to in other translations. Let's see right here. Let's see what I got. Obviously, the first one is going to be wizards. I can get in a little bit into this one. I just kind of woke myself up a little bit. Let's see. The King of the Jews. Okay. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judæa, in the days of King Herod the Great, behold, wizards from the Orient arrived in Jerusalem. Now, I'm going to just break it down real quick. Like I said, this is going to be a vlog, okay? Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judæa in the days of King Herod the Great. Well, that's his name in Aramaic, King Herod the Great. It's not in that. You're not going to see that in Greek. You're not going to see that in Latin. But you do see it in Aramaic, King Herod the Great. And I only call him that in that first instance when he's first mentioned. After that, I just call him Harold or King Harold, whatever the text actually says. But in Aramaic is King Herod the Great. So it's not just making that up. Now, what about the word wizards? So you're probably going to say wizards. Wizards from the, behold, wizards from the Orient arrived in Jerusalem. Now, okay, let's begin with wizards. Okay, so that the word is magi, right? But you have to understand, or if you keep, like I said, if you're reading the older translations, King James, Geneva, Deuteronomy, etc., even some of the modern ones, it's gonna be wise man. So we'll talk about wise men or wise man, wise men first. Wise men. Behold, wise men, wise men. Okay. Well, in the originals, doesn't matter which one it is. There's nothing there about a wise or nothing there about a man. So again, that's an invention from William Tyndale. Okay. Which again, it's one of the attributes of the magi, right? We'll call them magi for a point of reference. It's one of the attributes of them, and what we call now in modern times the Wycliffe translation of the Bible, the Middle English Bible. It wasn't written by Wycliffe by himself, but it's kind of attributed to him, for simplicity's sake. And basically, he called them astronomers. Okay, astronomers. Again, that's one of the characteristics of a magi. They do astronomy. Okay, they're astronomers. Now, in the Old English, the one that even came out even earlier, prior to the Middle English one, prior to quote unquote Wycliffe Bible, they were called starcrafters. And again, that's just the Old English way of calling an astronomer. Astronomer, that's a Latin word. So before Latin even really started influencing English, the Old English way to call someone an astronomer, you say, oh, he's a starcrafter. Okay, something along those lines. I think star is, it's not important, but I don't think they use the word star. They called in Old English the word for star is something else. Okay, I think stars comes from Latin. But just again, for simplicity's sake, they were called star crafters. Okay, obviously they're not just those things. All right, so when you say magi, okay, let's say you're reading a modern translation, it says magi. That's called a transliteration. All right, basically you're just saying the words, but you truly don't know the meaning. And if you were to translate magi, which is a Latin word, which they get it from the Greeks, which the Greeks get it from the Persians get it from the old Persian language. And I'll get to that let me say this before I get to that. So when you say magi, you're basically saying the word mage. The translators haven't translated it into English properly, into mage, because I have my theories, because they don't want you to associate these people with like magic and Warcraft and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all these weird things, and Gandalf the Grey and mages and wizards. Okay, and that's kind of true, that's kind of accurate. You don't want to think that's what these people were. Okay, but when you say magi, that's what you're saying mage. Okay, you're just saying it in the Latin way. Okay, but if you look at the word, if you get a comprehensive dictionary, look up the word mage. Okay, where did the word mage come from? It came from the word magi. Okay, so you're already saying something similar to wizards, you just don't know it. But again, it doesn't mean like the Harry Potter type, this type of wizard. Okay, and the reason they didn't use the word magi or mage back in the King James days, because there were like witchcraft trials going on back then, and anything associated with like magic and stuff like that, it was really looked down upon. As a matter of fact, King James himself, he was part of a lot of in his earlier days as a king, he was a part of witchcraft trials himself. That's side history, and kind of during his later reign, he was very skeptical of them, right? Because he kind of saw firsthand. He was really gung-ho about it. I think he even wrote a book about it. Okay, like a manual. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he did. But he was really gung-ho about catching witches and all this stuff. And later on, he became skeptical with age, with wisdom. As he got older, he became very skeptical of the whole witchcraft trials and all that stuff. So that's one reason they probably didn't want to use anything like the word wizard or mage or magi. So they said the word wise men. Okay, again, which is pretty clever. It's a good attribute. But just so you know, as a matter of fact, doesn't say nothing about wise men in there. So where do you come with the word wizards? Okay. So the word wizard is an old English word, okay? It's the word wise, like wise man, wise, and the word ard, like hard, ard, wiseards. Okay, and I'm actually not the first one to come up with this. There's a PDF floating around out there in internet. I don't know the guy's name, but it was a Bible done, I think, somewhere in between the Geneva Bible and the King James Bible. And like I think he honestly only did like a few chapters, but he called them wiseards. Okay, well that's kind of a precursor to the word wizards. Okay, because there's no such thing as a wiseard anymore, unless you got, like I said, you got a Middle English dictionary, but no one has those. But everyone has a modern dictionary that has the word wizard in there. So let's go back to the Old Persian. That's the original meaning. Okay. If you trace the word back, it goes all the way back to the Old Persian words. It's not an easy thing to translate without, having a big giant paragraph or a big giant, footnote at the bottom. And that's one thing I didn't want on my trial. I don't want footnotes. I just want you to read it, and it's gonna make sense. Okay. And if you're kind of befuddled, you don't understand, and that's kind of, maybe that's a good thing, and maybe that's a good effect that you kind of want. So you ask more questions. It's just not in the text itself. So basically, the Old Persian. So what does Magi mean in Old Persian? I'm not going to go through the words. How do they say it in the Greek? How do they say it in Aramaic? I'm not going to go through every single one. If you're really interested, look it up yourself. You'll see it's exactly where it comes from. It means a Zoroastrian priest. That's all it means. It's a way to call a Zoroastrian priest. Okay. Now that being said, you have to look at, and if you wanted to put that in there as a translation, because you say, oh well, this word, from the beginning, way past the Greeks, past the, in the Old Persian language, it means Zoroastrian priest. We should just put that. Here's the problem with that. That's what kind of meant originally. That's kind of what it means now, but that's not what happened. Because in the time of Jesus, Zoroastrianism was a lot bigger than it is now. It's not completely gone. There's still, even in the United States, well, I'm not sure if they're called temples or churches, or I'm not sure what they're called. I don't know too much about them, but I know where I used to live, there was a place called and they had a thing, and it was like an old church, and they bought it up and they fixed it up. And it was Zoroastrianism. So Tarianism, I'm saying it wrong, it doesn't matter, but the point is they're still around. Okay, but back in the time of Jesus, they were definitely around, especially around that Middle East area. So the context is, these three, imagine, okay, if you did use that word, Zoroastrianism, 3 Zoroastrian priests show up to the gates of where King Harold the Great is. Would he have listened to 3 priests of Zoroastrianism? No. If 3 astronomers or stargazers showed up at his gate, would he have listened to them? No. If 3 wise guys show up there, wise men, no, he wouldn't listen to them. So whoever these guys were, they were powerful, influential enough, or renowned enough to get the attention of the king. Okay, not anyone. Imagine if Elon Musk wants to talk to the president of the United States. He's probably gonna have a better chance of talking to the president of the United States than a guy from the Geek Squad. Some Best Buy guy, or maybe some like mid-level Google engineer. The CEO of Google probably has a better chance of talking to Joe Biden than an average person, or a priest. The Pope can talk to the president, but if some random bishop wanted to talk to the president, he's probably gonna have a hard time. Unless he's like the Bishop of New York or something like that. But just a random one from Texas, or just someone from some town you never heard of, he's gonna have a hard time getting a hold of the president. But the Pope wouldn't, right? And maybe a famous bishop like Cardinal Gibbons and or whatever his name, Dolan, the guy in New York, something like that. Maybe he wouldn't have such a hard time. But so it's kind of the same thing. You got to put that into context. Who's going to be talking to the king? So we know that they're called mages, okay, and we know that they're part of. So when you talk about Zoroastrian priests, we know they were religious. So they just weren't 100% academics. They weren't just in it for academia. And we know they were rich, right? Because we know that they had hidden treasures. if you do a lot of research on the Magi, they obviously came from the Silk Route. They didn't come from China. We know one of them was really, really dark skinned. So we know, and then that doesn't mean all the time we watch the movies. There's a guy from like Africa that's playing the guy's name is Casper. We know his name's Casper for sure. We know he had really, really dark skin, but they came from the east from Jerusalem. They didn't come from the west south. So they couldn't have been like a new what we call Nubians back then. It couldn't have been like a Nubian. Obviously, it was someone from India, right? Because people from India, they come all types of shades of brown, but sometimes they can come pretty, pretty, pretty dark, almost like, or they almost look like a Nubian, but they're not. They're from India. But I'm not saying they came from India. All I'm saying is they came definitely. They were rich, they were religious, they were very intelligent, as far as like learning different type of crafts and stuff, and probably not in the sense of like, oh, witchcraft where they're making pacts with devils and they're saying spells, but more or less their craft was probably dealing with the elements. And back then, especially the Greeks, they were really into the elements, the four elements. Okay, I think it's like wind, fire, earth, water, right? And I'm not an expert at that. And I'm not saying that's what all they were doing. But they were more or less, and again, this is all theory. That's all you have is theory, but they were more or less, yeah, it's very hard. Like you said, you would need a whole book to explain just this one little word. So I don't blame people for using all types of things. But here's why I use wizard. Let's just get straight to the point, okay? Here's why I use the word wizard. Because they're kind of religious, okay? So it gets that thing out. They're powerful, okay? And in today's culture, wizards are kind of considered good. Okay, it's not like the medieval culture where it's witchcraft and we're not talking about necromancers, we're not talking about sorcerers, we're not talking about spellcasters, none of this weird stuff. I guess a wizard's pretty weird too. But anyways, you have the fact that the Old English word of a wizard means a wizard. Okay, so you have the original word going for you. You have the fact that in today's culture, wizards are not bad. Not as bad, I guess. I guess a wizard can be good and he can be bad, right? Like in movies. Um, what's another reason to use the word wizard versus, or again, you're already saying the word mage. So you're already saying something very similar to the word mage. The only difference, the mage, that lineage goes all the way back to the old Persian, to the original word. Okay, that's pretty good still. That's still a pretty good translation. But I wanted something that reflected English. And again, I had old English, good old English backing to it, which be the word wizard, which we call the word not wiz, how we pronounce wizard. So again, that's it. I'm not saying it was like Gandalf the Grey visiting him or the guy from Harry Potter. No, it's a tough word. No matter which way you say it, it's tough. Yeah. So that's it. And then and I'll make a whole video with that because I know I've been ranting about it, like about that. Like, I'm pretty tired now. I'm tired now. I lost my energy. I have to definitely make some bullet points and go over that in finer detail, as to why the best word to describe him is wizard, or the wizards, right? And oh yeah, and by the way, okay, quick, okay, because this is actually attached. So let me read. Behold, wizards from the Orient arrived in Jerusalem. So we know they're from the Orient. Now, the Orient could just mean east. Okay, but here's something. Well, it's better to use Orient here and east everywhere else, but it's better to use Orient here because Jerusalem itself is in the Orient. Okay, it's what's good. The Orient, the east, or the Oriental, is broken up into three in the ancient times, right? It was anything east of Athens or east of Rome, or depending on where you were. If you're in Athens, you would say the Orient, east of me. And you have the Near East, which would be like Jerusalem, Syria. You have the Middle East, which would be like Baghdad, Persia back in the day. And you have the Far East, which would be China, Japan, Vietnam, those type of countries, okay? So obviously they didn't come from the Far East, these wizards, these Magi's. Obviously they didn't come from the Near East. They came from the Middle East. So we're along the Middle East. If you wanted to, do some research, well, they came along the Silk Route. Obviously, they came along the Silk Route. So I'm guessing somewhere in between Nepal and India. I'm guessing somewhere pretty there, and I'm guessing they were probably religious in a sense because they know about. They say, what do they say? Where is the King of the Jews who has been born? So when Herod hears this, he says, "I'm the King of the Jews. Where is the King of the Jews who has been born?" That's why I said, and in hearing these things, Herod the king was shocked, and the whole of Jerusalem with them, because Herod's the King of the Jews. So obviously these guys, they knew a lot. They knew, they were expecting him. Where is it? For we observed his star in the east, and are come to kneel down before him. So again, this type of I say kneel down before him. This is like a weird bow that doesn't exist anymore, that they used to do back in the day. Very due to kings and I guess God Himself, right? So, and they adored him, right? Later on, I said that's the word, they adored him. They seen him in a little crib or in Mary holding him. They adored him. That means they loved him, right? They were showing just loved him. And again, I'll talk about that more in depth later too. I'll get my notes out. So we talked about the Orient, talked about the wizards. We talked about, okay, so again, a little bit of a ramble, but whatever. So yeah, so we know the wizards were rich, had money, came along the Silk Route, probably like around Nepal, India, and they were religious, expecting Jesus. I'm guessing, if you heard of the priesthood of Melchizedek, I always have a hard time saying that. Melchizedek, he was the first guy in the Old Testament and it's easy to sacrifice the wine and the bread, and you do hear about this guy in the New Testament. Obviously, the priesthood of I have a hard time saying it. Melchizedek. I'm guessing it was something similar like that. It had to have been some type of organization, some type of priesthood that God set up in the Old Testament, and it was just must have been a very small, in some city. Obviously, he knows everything, right? He set this up, because it just couldn't have been just pure academia. It could have just been like these wise guys, these smart guys. They saw a star, and he just knew every single prophecy in the world, and have to know, oh, yeah, that's the Jewish one. Let's go over there and give him gifts. Obviously, God set that up beforehand, and they're no longer around. It must have been like a temple, something like that, sitting. And had it been at Jerusalem's pretty high elevation, so wherever this place was, it had to been higher elevation than Jerusalem, off the Silk Route, but not all the way in China. It's not in what we call the Far East, Middle East, Nepal, India. So all the information we have kind of says that, and that's why I chose the word wizard, because it's kind of mysterious. It kind of makes you think. It makes you want to look it up, because that's the only way you're really going to learn what they were, is by looking the word up. And if you want to just think that it was some type of like Gandalf the Grey type character, I mean, so be it. It's better to think that than think you're saying something that you're not when you say Magi, in my opinion. And that's what I think is the most accurate, like I said, most accurate translation. And that's it. I'll get more into some of the other things that, like I said, maybe sound like quote unquote weird, that you haven't heard in another translation. And I'll talk about why this one's the most accurate. Like I said, 7 years been working on this, on the technique, not necessarily just the translation itself, just the technique, what you're gonna call, like, you want to do something in certain steps, right? You don't want to skip steps, and you don't, so you do things in certain steps, and that's the best way I can describe it. And I'm just vlogging right now, and this is the way it's gonna be. So, peace out. Let's see. All right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. See you guys.